Hello, everyone. Nightmare here, and this is Whale FM's Fireside Chat with Artists. In this show, we talk about everything and anything art and crypto in the NFT scene with designers and creators alike, otherwise known as non-fungible tokens. My guest today is James Marshall, aka Dalek, the critically acclaimed multi-disciplined American-born artist whose iconic space monkeys continue to push the boundaries of color, geometry, and sanity. James, thank you so much for coming on to chop it up with us today.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for having me. I like that intro, man. That's solid.
Hey, I work on it, man. That's where I could drop the ball quick. So I want to make sure I'm pretty good at that aspect. Not quite as talented as you with the art, certainly. If you could you just give us a little bit about yourself and your background and journey into art? Your work is so amazing. Before we get to that, I just really want to take a moment to talk about you as an artist and how we got to this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, like anybody, I'm sure it's a long journey. I mean, obviously, I watched a lot of cartoons as a kid, drew a lot, never really anticipated kind of pursuing art as a career and just kind of landed into it through skateboard culture and getting into graffiti. And, um, it just kind of happened organically over the years. So I started painting graffiti probably in the early 90s, when I moved to Chicago. Started connecting with some heads out in New York and up in California, and slowly just learned that craft and was trying to develop my own style. I just letter forms with graffiti were never my strong suit. There weren't a ton of character writers at that point, right? There were the b-boy characters in the 80s, but there weren't a ton of people doing characters in the graffiti scene in the early 90s. So I just decided to take that route and to try to develop something that would be iconic, that would basically become like a sticker, or throw up something people could easily identify me by. And it just I slowly started developing things, and out of that, the Space Monkey emerged around 1995, and I've just kind of been developing it ever since.
Super dope. When I was scrolling through different things on Twitter, as I always do, I like to check artists beyond just people that are having drops and whatnot. But I kept seeing other people retweeting yours without even a reference to the actual work for sale, just saying that something was dope, right? And I
Mhm.
said, this image is familiar to me. Like I've seen this before, and when I looked into it and seen what you had done in the past and why I would recognize it, and then saw what you were doing now, I just definitely had to reach out. And I find your background pretty fascinating. So, military family, right? So you're moving around a
Yeah.
lot of different places when you're younger.
Yeah, I
Uh,
moved about every 18 months, man.
right, right. And so I'm actually New England myself. I'm here in the middle of Massachusetts, so I'm going to claim you as one of our own from New England, seeing that you were born in Connecticut. And then actually, you spent time in Japan, which
Yeah.
is something you can see an influence in definitely in your art.
hmm
Hawaii came back.
Yep.
Um, and then, like you said, you kind of found your voice in that like subculture of street art, graffiti, skateboarding, punk rock, all that whole kind of scene right there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing bled into another with all that, right? I mean, it was, underground comics and that culture that's sort of, rock music led me into punk, and then punk led me into skateboarding, and that led me into graffiti. So, yeah, it was just this organic, you know, kind of growth through all these subcultures and countercultures. But it was certainly what I was always attracted to. Um, when you move around that much as a kid, man, you certainly are more inclined to become kind of self-aware, self-involved, right? Like I wasn't seeking out anything that I couldn't truly connect to because there was no point. So um, I just found things that I identified with, and it made me happy, and that's what those things were, man.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because some people just want that route and that's it. Like that's the basis on what they work on. But you also, you went to get a formal education, sociology to start, but then ended up with your BFA from the School of Art and Institute in Chicago. So, really formalize some of the processes and things like that, and even taking an apprenticeship, right, with Japanese painter Takashi Murakami.
Yep. Yeah. So clear up a few things. And I went to art school in Chicago. I went for photography.
Okay.
Uh, One thing I was doing, in high school and my early college years, and I was getting my degree in sociology, was I wanted to find ways to visually document the subcultures I was a part of, right? So skateboarding, graffiti, punk rock. Um, and so that's how that started. And I went to get, I had some buddies that lived in Chicago and I was sick of living in Virginia. I was ready to go. So it just worked out. But I never took any painting, drawing, anything while I was in art school. So for the most part, aside from my time with Murakami, I'm completely a self-taught painter. Um,
Okay.
and then, so yeah, I did. I moved to New York. We'll skip around, but I moved to New York in 2000, and I went up and saw Murakami's show at the Boston Museum. And again, like you said, having gone to high school in Japan and anime being part of my high school life and something I was super drawn to. Um, I was friends with Cause, but Cause was still in some pretty early rudimentary aspects of his work, right? So there wasn't as much as I admired it and was drawn to it and fed off it, it wasn't the same, right? So Murakami, when I saw that show and realized how flat that dude painted, um, I knew that stylistically that was the approach I wanted to develop, right? So I hadn't had my kids yet. I just moved to New York, and I was like, all right, well, if I got to, I'll go back to Japan and just study with this dude and figure it out, right? And an apprenticeship is a big piece of Japanese culture, so I figured that dude would get it. Um, but it turns out they had a studio in New York, literally a 10-minute block or a 10-minute walk from my house, and so I was able to just cruise there every day and work and that's really where I learned studio practice, right? I learned how to kind of organize myself and how to go about building a painting and just a lot of practical stuff that I had no experience with. So um, that's a huge piece of me kind of converting what I was doing into becoming a little more professional and how I approached it.
Right. Probably just like processes and whatnot, but certainly you were well
Mm.
on your way to your style and your art. I have a question because I'm not really familiar with his work at the time. Was he doing like those for those that don't know, he's known for these bright multicolored flowers is what I can think of that he did for a lot of hip hop albums, right? It's for Kanye, for a lot of different people. It was used in a lot of different hip hop elements not long ago. Was he doing that vibrant, bright color thing then, or is that something he actually may have, you may have rubbed off on him as well with your crazy use of color?
No, first of all, I had no ability to use color at that point. That's been a long journey in figuring that out. Um, Yeah, no, he was doing the super, super bright poppy stuff. He had a really good eye for putting color together. And one of the things we did at the studio was mix colors. So that's the first time I learned to mix colors and to kind of build out palettes. And it took me a while, man. I mean, I still feel like I'm still learning how to use color. So I think that's a long ongoing process for anybody. But no, he definitely taught me way more than I could have ever taught him. But he may have picked up some things from me. You
Yeah,
never know.
you never know. And then, fast forward a little bit. I think just before we started, you told me you're in North Carolina now, right?
Yeah, I've been
And
here 14 years.
did I see that right? You're a big college hoops fan.
Oh yeah, big time, man.
So with all your traveling, how'd you settle on this being the team that you would champion?
Well, look, so the whole thing with Duke is when I went to VCU, right? So everything in my life is always connected, right? So I was living in Hawaii one of the kids I went to high school with in Japan had moved to Richmond and gone to VCU, which is Virginia Commonwealth University. So this is I graduated high school in '86, moved to Hawaii. I was going to community college and just working at a surf shop there. Um, he's like, look, man, my dad was getting stationed back in Virginia. He's like, VCU's chill, Richmond's chill. Come here. I said, all right. So I went there. So that's how I ended up back in Virginia. And now I lost track because I was back talking. What were we talking about?
How you settle on Duke?
Oh yeah. So, anyways, the second year I was in school there, which would have been '89. This kid who ended up becoming one of my best friends moved down from Northern Virginia, and he went to South Lakes High School, which is where Grant Hill went to, and he was friends with Grant Hill. We all know that Grant Hill and that Duke team were the greatest Duke team ever. Um, so he was a crazy Duke fan because that's where Grant Hill went. So as soon as Grant went there, he started rooting for Duke. Obviously, Richmond is only 2.5 hours from down here. Um, so that's it. We would champion and roll down and check out games and obviously watch them on TV. And those dudes won back-to-back titles in '90 and '91, and it was just a good happenstance to walk right into it. And I think because of how I walked into it, it just stuck with me. So when we moved back, when I moved here to Raleigh, I was fortunate enough to link up with people there. So we go and have spent a ton of time going to games and hanging out there. And there's nothing like it. Cameron Indoor is the greatest place on earth, and Duke's an amazing program. And the rivalry of Duke UNC, and even with what NC State has, North Carolina is the center of college basketball, and nobody can dispute that. No Kentucky or Kansas fan, because you don't have the rivalries. You don't have the same environment, man. So it's all about us.
I had to ask the question, just being a big Fab Five freshman fan.
Yeah, man. We schooled them.
And so,
You know,
everyone in the whale community knows that's near and dear to my heart.
the funny thing about the Fab Five, man, is that they got the 2 years those dudes were together. They got beat by Duke and UNC. They got schooled by both Carolina teams, and those dudes went out with 0 titles. Obviously, Chris Webber's blown timeout call against UNC will go down in history, or depending on your angle. But I'll tell you, Michigan State fans don't like Duke either. So I went to Detroit and I had my Duke sweatshirt on, and people weren't pleased, but I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
we we own Michigan's ass, man. That's the way that goes.
Well, I like the impact that they had on culture. I'll have to talk the way around my wounds here a little bit, but we can still be friends because I have spent some time in Richmond. I've been partying down at the Fan, done a few things, so we do
Oh yeah,
have something to have kinship over. So
no
all this
doubt.
is happening. It sounds like the whole way you just know that this is what you want to do in life. You want to be an artist.
Well, look, man. Again, it kept finding me, right? So I never. You got to remember, man. At that time, late '80s, early '90s, there were very few examples of people that were making a living doing art. I mean, Shepard Fairey wasn't making a living at that point. Ron English, like, none of these, like Basquiat and Herring were dead. It was, there wasn't anything to go, hey, this is the route I'm going to take because this is what makes sense professionally. So I loved art. I loved making art. I never really understood how that would turn into a career. Um, and so I didn't pursue it as a career. I just pursued it as a passion, and it eventually became a career, right? So I was lucky. I moved after Chicago. I moved to California, and I was lucky enough to work in the skateboard industry. And um, but I wasn't making art there. But that's where I met Shepard Fairey, and Rich Jacobs and Phil Frost and a lot of those kind of people. And as that whole thing was taken off, and going up to San Francisco in the mid '90s when Revoke and Saber were living there, and obviously Twist and those guys were just crushing everything, and Chris Johansson, and it a lot of it was just timing, right? I walked into certain things at the right time and was lucky enough to find the right people, and um, just like I said, man, it just kept rolling along. So to this day, I'm not sure if I'm still a professional artist or not. I'm just riding it until it doesn't go any further.
I'm sure everyone believes that you are among the best, according to the hype that we had here. So, some people are asking in the Discord and questions are coming in. How would you characterize your art if you had to describe it to someone?
Yeah, I mean, look, the easiest thing to do, right, is you could call it pop art or kind of cartoon art. I try. It's a really fine line, right? Because I don't want the space monkey to be quote unquote just this cartoon character, right? That has this kind of storyline, and it's like, oh, what's he up to this week? The whole thing was meant to be a representation of kind of the journey of humanity, right? So for me, it was this device to reflect social issues, and I am a sociologist, right, and an anthropologist. So my fascination with human evolution, cultural evolution, how humans exist within societies, and that's really what Space Monkey was brought in to represent, right? It was that idea of taking cultural references, right? So comics and cartoons and all these things that had amassed over the years, and developing them into a tool to kind of relay how I see cultural events, right? So it's pop art, but it's social, it's behavioral, but it's also meant to be ambiguous enough that people can kind of bring themselves to the table, right? I want it to represent everyone. It's not me telling a specific story. It's me relating what I hope are commonalities or these bridges, um, of the human experience. And then also just aesthetically to build something that just fits my aesthetic eye, right? So I don't just want it to be this simple cartoon, right? I want it to feel, there's a lot of design elements to it. There's a lot of patterns, and um, I'm trying to learn to create depth, and it's just so it's very complicated and hard to just wrap up. But I think I covered most of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I really appreciate all of the nuance there, and there's a lot to unpack, even after you initially are grabbed by the vibrancy and some of the emotion that it can evoke. Why Dalek? Why this evil Doctor Who reference?
Well, like first of all, when I grew up, there were four channels, right? No one probably remembers those times too much, but man, Doctor Who, Benny Hill, a lot of that British shit was on PBS, especially late at night. And the one thing about the Daleks that was interesting were just, man, there were these crazy trash can looking robots that were, out to wipe out humanity. And so again, from a social perspective of this battle of humanity versus technology, right? And the pros and cons of it. I think that's another theme that for me has gone back, since I was a kid. It's just I've always been fascinated with science fiction and space and sort of technology and how we've evolved as humans. And the name Space Monkey comes from literally that, right? From NASA and these people training chimps to go into space and push buttons, and what it means for humanity as we evolve with our technology and have such access at our fingertips. Does it make us brighter? Does it make us dumber? Um, did it set us back and now we're kind of learning to walk again? I think there's a lot of interesting questions around our relationship with technology and privacy. And, I think with NFTs and crypto and all this, I think it's another huge, time in our lives where humanity might be able to free itself from these old isms that have bogged it down for centuries or millenniums, right? Millennia, right? That's right. Of these structures that were put in place to keep us subservient and not really give us the freedom we need. So again, that's all wrapped up in there. That's a big part of what I'm trying to get to as an artist. So again, Dalek, a lot of it was simply it was a character I loved when I was starting graffiti. I was looking for the right letter combinations thing that worked, and it just kind of clicked. Um, so a little bit of it's just circumstantial.
I love it. I love the nuance and layers there is to everything that you do, because it definitely evokes emotion, right? There's a harmonious aspect to it with the different shapes, but they're kind of almost seemingly coming apart. It's menacing a little bit, right? I feel almost some of the colors aggressive yet comforting at the same time. I think no, my little guy was in here taking a look at some of the pictures, and he said it reminded him of Cuphead, which is a video game. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's based
And
on some of these old timey cartoons, right? But they're like giant hatchets in their hands and they're smiling at you with huge eyes while they're trying to kill you.
hmm yeah, look, I think again, man, life is all these complex emotions at once, right? I think that it's a big part of why there's a mental health crisis across the planet, right? It's people are constantly having to evolve and readjust to an environment that's changing at such a rapid rate. um, it's hard, and so you can feel happy, stressed, and anxious all at the same time, right? And I think that learning to unpack and break down all these different layers of emotions and learning how to deal with them is a big piece of, again, how people get healthy. And again, I think it's important, man. I think that it's important to acknowledge that a lot of people are stressed out, overwhelmed, afraid to ask questions, unsure of themselves. Um, and I think that those are discussions that are important to have, and it's stuff that I want to try to communicate through what I do. And part of it's just natural because I'm the same way, right? I'm constantly fighting 20 emotions at once on most days.
Right. And I think this probably speaks to people even more going through what everyone's gone through with quarantine and COVID and social isolation and a lot of these feelings of being caught up in tech and juxtaposing these emotions kind of amplified because
hmm
of the environment. But really quick, because I just want to make sure I'm characterizing this right. So, Space Monkeys born on a wall in like '95 in Connecticut somewhere, right?
Right.
Is it still there by chance?
No, I think it's long gone, man.
Long gone. So we have this cool amalgamation of like street art and cartoons and Japanese anime, punk. Did I read this right? That it's not actually a monkey, but this is a mouse, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, whether it's a monkey or a mouse or something completely alien, it's irrelevant, right? I mean, people can see it how they want. Again, the term space monkey goes back to the idea of again NASA or whomever training monkeys to go into space, right? Monkeys also being the closest evolutionary creature to humans, right? And sometimes our behavior might be a little more monkeyish than human. So again, not so much a direct reference to the creature visually as it is a reference kind of metaphorically to a lot of different aspects. So is it a mouse? Some people says it reminds them of Itchy and Scratchy, which of course is a take on Tom and Jerry, which is a take on Mickey Mouse, and on and on and on. Oh, yeah, of course, there's those elements there, and so the mouse aspect, you can say that's there too. It's whatever you want it to be, right? It's really meant to have that kind of free form flow that interpret it as you like.
Right. I love that it's got that much depth to it, right? If people want to think about it, or they can look at a picture of a mouse with a hatchet. However they want to interpret it, that's the beauty of art.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. I'm not here to preach too much, just to give some rails and let people have some fun.
Right. Well, yeah, I did want to talk about something that I read, and in your bio, I think it referenced that you kind of grew tired of the early iterations of Space Monkey and how it was just this character, and you wanted to kind of break from the constraints of that character and the structure of it, and so that's when you started doing some different things with, breaking out the geometric pieces and kind of creating on a broader scale. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time it just went as far as my skill sets would allow, right? Like, so one thing I'm really bad at doing is kind of regurgitating something, right? So I can't just keep space, I couldn't keep painting space monkeys just because it's what people wanted, right? I didn't have the skills to take it any further at that time. And so I grew frustrated with it. I grew bored with it. Um, I certainly didn't want to just be this one trick pony. But at the time, I couldn't even develop the backgrounds or, I didn't have the color knowledge yet. So what happened was it sort of started getting covered up with these geometric elements. It's probably 2006, seven. Um, and then that just took on a life of its own, right? And the geometric work went through like 500 different phases as I used it. I think what it ended up being was it was this great tool to figure out how to use color, how to use and create space, depth, build composition. Um, it just got me thinking completely differently about art. And so it took me a while, and it's why it went through so many different phases. Was it was really more of just this long exploratory phase. And I was happy doing it. I had a bunch of different styles within the geometric work. I developed it from 2007, really probably straight up through 2016, 17. And then I really had no intention to go back to Space Monkey, but I had a couple people who were pestering me to make a couple for them, and it slowly started getting dusted off and brought out, and I just I found the passion for it again. I realized that I had new things to bring to it, and it's just kind of since I started back, it's just kind of taken off because I think now I'm starting to figure out how to piece all of those things together, right? So I've slowly brought all the different geometric styles. I've learned how to abstract the monkey and create it into the environment instead of it just sitting on top of the environment. I've gotten more comfortable with cropping and covering things and layering things, and um, so it's just, again, it's an evolutionary process. It just takes time. Um, and even with the NFT thing, like I've never spent so much time going into a file and coloring it. I can't even color like that with paintings. It's just, it would take forever. But because now I have the ability to work on it, I've been able to discover all this new things because I can bring so much more depth and layering to the work digitally that I just couldn't do before. As well as bringing the animations and things like that to life. And so, yeah, man, it's an ongoing evolution. So for me, I'm like, look, I'm on track. Things keep moving forward. Things naturally come into my life. These things just kind of flow, and that's just how I keep on rolling. So
Yeah, I love that it's that evolution that's naturally happening. You don't know what's the next insane iteration of space monkeys and geometric madness that you're going to see, or color for that matter. And you were just talking about trying to intersperse the space monkey directly with some of the geometric environments, and I can just imagine how difficult that can be digitally. You're literally painting some of this stuff, right? Like, that's incredible for me to wrap my head around how you would be able to do that with such precision.
Yeah, and time and patience. I mean, like anything, right? It's just, it's getting the drawing done. And, I used to draw out the entire painting at once. And then I'd go just fill it in, outline it, done. And now I'm realizing like, here's what I know I kind of want to do, but I'm unsure of this. So I'll kind of draw and paint, and then I'll go in and paint on top. Um, or sometimes, I'll build layers underneath and then paint on top. And slowly as I discover things and go, all right, this worked, this didn't, I can do this better, I can do that this way quicker. Um, just yeah, just keep building on stuff. But that's pretty much it. I mean, a lot of that stuff's painted. Obviously, I do a lot of screen prints. There's a lot of layering with a lot of test prints we do. Um, but even my digital files, they all start with drawings, just pencil and ink drawings, and then I'll bring them in the computer, and that right there started as a ink drawing, and then there's elements that are strictly digital in there, obviously, but um, you know, I think that's like three different drawings I pieced together, and then a bunch of digital elements. You know, and I've been able to redo that piece 4 or 5 times because as I keep learning, I'm able to bring more depth to it. But I think this is the final iteration of that piece you have there on the screen.
Very cool. Yeah, from a technical perspective, with between color choices and what you had said about different iterations to try to get it to the depth you want, like how long are you talking to from start to finish on some of these?
I mean, on the digital stuff or on illustration, you're probably 2 3 days in the drawing, inking, and then probably 3 4 days in the coloring. With paintings, it just depends. Some paintings take me a week and a half, 2 weeks. Some take 6 to 8 weeks. It just depends on the size and the detail.
Right.
Um, but that's the whole thing with me is I'm trying to get to that place, like I'm sure a lot of artists are, where you're financially okay to where you can spend the amount of time. Like I'd love to spend 4 5 6 months working on a huge canvas and really going in deep and trying things and playing around, but it's not financially viable at this point. I don't need it to be because in time, maybe it will be, and I'll get that opportunity. I find that what's in front of me right now is still helping me evolve and get better and learn things. So I think as I have more freedom to invest more time in what I'm doing, the work will ideally continue to grow. But digital again becomes a great outlet to play because it is much quicker than exploring the same ideas in a painting. Um, so I've been just focusing a lot on drawing and working digitally and continuing to push that envelope because that's just kind of, where things are at right now.
Right. So do you still, dabble in photography or murals or illustrating for, commercial purposes, or you kind of focusing just on this right now?
Yeah, I mean, I never did commercial work in any sense other than I've done commercial work with my work, right, with the geometric work or Space Monkey.
Right, right.
Um, murals, yeah. I mean, a lot of murals got put on hold because of COVID and travel and um, but it's also, right now this is the best thing, right? I told you all my kids are in high school. My wife works full time at home, and it's not a time for me to be out on the road anyways. This is a good period. And like I said, man, everything finds you at the right time, right? So some years I'm out on the road nonstop. I'm painting murals, I'm traveling, I'm doing shows. Sometimes I'm just here in the studio working nonstop and I don't go anywhere. So I took advantage of COVID and just, you know, doubled down on studio time and working. And, um, I'm doing what I can now, and as I can kick some of these kids out of the house here in the next few years, then there'll be more freedom to, start traveling and getting back out there and doing more projects like that. But I let projects come to me. I find that everything finds me at the right time in my life, so I'm in no rush.
Yeah, I just seen Powwow come through my city and do a bunch of murals on a lot of
Hmm.
the skyscrapers and big walls. So I can definitely envision this out there being super cool. Do you still do street art when the opportunity's there, by the way? Do you, still get out there with spray cans and do work?
I mean, it's been ages. I'm not going to say I wouldn't do it.
But you could throw up a burner.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have a good time doing it. It's just been a while, and most of the guys I paint with, they don't live around here. So again, I got a lot of good friends, out in San Diego. That's where Persway and Mike Giant and those guys are, and I love painting with them. And Scribe and some of my buddies out in Kansas City. At this point, if I'm going to paint, I'm just going to get out there with some old friends and throw it around just for fun. So.
Right. I did want to ask you when it comes to inspiration, you definitely touched on the sociological and psychological aspect of it, of what you're trying to express and kind of convey. But being that music was such a part of your youth, does that play a role? Do you listen to tunes when you're doing work? Is like their punk music playing at all, or it's just you and your thoughts alone in the studio?
Oh no, there's always music playing or something like that. But yeah, no, I think it's a huge piece. It gets me moving for sure. A lot of times it's hard to get up and get motivated every day. So some coffee and some music will get you cranking.
Um, and on a related note, some people in the community asked if you can name a couple of your favorite bands.
Well, it depends on the genre, but look, I mean, growing up with punk, I'll tell you the stuff that I go back to all the time is a lot of the DC stuff because that's where I was living at that time, right? So I listened to a lot of Minor Threat and Scream and Government Issue. Those are huge bands for me. The California stuff again. The Faction was huge for me. Adolescence, Agent Orange, JFA, stuff like that. A lot of the skate punk stuff. Good old Gangrene from Boston, Jerry's Kids, SSD. Those are all good Boston bands if you're from up in that area. The Freeze. Freeze was another great Boston band. Agnostic Front from New York, always a classic. The Cro-Mags. Can't go wrong ever with them. Bad Brains, another DC classic. Um, yeah, I mean, it could go on. Black Flag, Circle Jerks. It's endless, man.
That's awesome and impressive. I think we just set up a whole audience playlist for people to put together after this. So very cool. Another question that's from the community: are your projects typically planned, or do you freestyle sometimes and see where it leads you?
Yeah, I always try to freestyle. I'm horrible at planning. Um, I just, even in getting this, like, now I'm getting this collection for OpenSea ready for this launch Monday. There was a loose plan thematically. And then, it just, I sat down and started working. So I find it's just better because I like to problem solve. I think for me as an artist, I'm trying to learn to be a better artist. And so I'm a huge believer in trial and error. I think you just got to get into something, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and you learn from that, and then you make adjustments. And but I find that's how I get better. So I just try to. Sometimes I'll have a canvas in front of me in the morning. I just start drawing. Sometimes it gels, and I keep building on it. And sometimes I gotta whitewash it and start over. And the same with colors. Sometimes you're hitting it. Sometimes you got to go back and fix something at the end. But it's a lot like math, man. I think if you start to do it and you figure out 80% of it, then it gets easier to figure out the other 20%. And so a lot of it becomes a process of elimination, or, hey, man, I might have backed myself into a corner here where I don't know what color to use here. And you really got to sit and think about, all right, well, I'm going to adjust and drop this here. But now that means I got to move this here. Um, and again, just figuring out how to get people to get their eyes to move, to push things forwards and backwards, accentuate things, de-accentuate things. But yeah, it's just I try to learn and just figure shit as I go on.
Cool. So, you're doing this. You have a amazing track record of putting together incredible geometric and space monkey works and so many different things. How did you find your way to the crypto and NFT art space?
Yeah, like everything happenstantially. So of course, like most people, I knew about Bitcoin and things of that nature, even from the time it evolved. But it was a fringe thing, right? I mean, I don't know enough about computers and the internet to, go on the black market and try to figure out how to trade Bitcoin in 2012. Um, I think that what happened was, as again, technology exchanges started where it was more accessible, um, that was the entry point, right? And at first, I didn't look any further than that. And then, I did my research, and, I knew blockchain technology as I started reading about it was this really super interesting technology, and decentralized computing. And it just makes sense, right? I mean, it's just the right evolution of computing power. Um, and so it was intriguing. So I think, like a lot of people, to me, it falls under the same guise as graffiti and punk and skateboarding and counterculture and subculture. I think it's very counterculture-ish. Um, and I think the community here, it shows that, man. I think that everyone, what drew me to skating and punk and all those communities, where they were people had shared ethoses, right? And not necessarily on every aspect, but they were all people who were trying to find their own way, and that those things were great vehicles for them to discover themselves, right? So, and they were all intertwined, right? So, and hip hop fell into that as well, right? I don't want to make it sound like punk was such an exclusive part of it, and hip hop wasn't, right? I was listening to Grandmaster Flash and Sugar Hill Gang and all that shit at the same time, when that stuff was still super, hard to come by, and still new. But I think the countercultural stuff, the community was always strong because people embraced each other, right? And I think, as someone who moved a lot, what was great was when I went from city to city, or state to state, or in my case, country to country. Man, when I went to Japan, I didn't miss a beat. I found kids that skated. I found punk shows, and I was up in Tokyo hanging out with, American kids, and diplomat kids from Europe, and Japanese kids. And, there were a lot of great Japanese punk bands, and there were great Japanese skaters and skate parks. And you started realizing I'm in a completely different country, but you'd never know, because culturally we speak the same language. And I think when you start realizing that people globally are speaking the same cultural languages, those are the things that break down barriers, man. Those are the things that get the isms the fuck out of the way and allow people to communicate and connect organically and humanly. And that's what we need as a species, man, is to get rid of the isms and deal with each other as people. And so I think crypto spoke to me for the same reason, man, because I think that culture and community is just as strong and just as outsider as any of those things that came through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on. Um, NFTs was the natural extension of that. When I first heard the term, and it went from never hearing it to hearing it 5,000 times a day all of a sudden, um, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? And let me get educated. And so I did, and I called people who were involved with it, who knew about it. I researched it online. I apparently discovered that Twitter is where all that stuff occurs. So I started following people, researching, studying, and I sat back and waited um, until the right scenario presented itself, right? And so my buddy Lurk came to me one day and he's like, "Look, man, first of all, he got me into Clubhouse. He gets me into a lot of things, man. So, he's a good dude. Um, he's like, look, this Hicket Nuke, it's a great site because I didn't understand wallets. I didn't understand gas. Like that to me was all foreign at that point. Um, he's like, look, this platform is easy. I'm going to walk you through getting a wallet set up. I'm going to walk you through getting everything synced. And he did it. And I said, all right, I'm going to just test the waters. And I took a file and I put it on there. And there you go. The rest was history. But immediately I started learning the community, engaging, understanding it, obviously paying respects to it, listening to it. It's not my world. I got into this whole new world of digital artists that I never knew existed. Um, and again, even with Discord, like, I just started a Discord like a week ago because that's what people in the community were asking me to do. And I did it, took to it like water, love it. It's a great way to communicate with people. And I think, again, at the heart of any good storyteller um, is that, man, it's about relationships. So getting in and talking to people and sharing things with people and hearing them and being able to get away from algorithms and, Twitter and Instagram want, I get what they're doing and I get that they have to do what they do. But, Discord becomes this pure vehicle to talk to people. Um, and again, the technology keeps creating ways for people to move past barriers and get more direct with each other. So um, that's kind of how I've gotten here. But it's, again, just kind of keep walking through it and learning. And when I'm ready for the next lesson, someone usually gives it to me.
Beautifully said. Love the correlation with counterculture and hip hop and punk music. That's definitely thematic, something that we hear a lot from musicians, but to hear it from you as well was super cool. Um, One of the questions from the community while you were talking about that was, do you have any plans to possibly bring Space Monkeys or what you do to the metaverse in crypto voxels or something else where they could have it in a digital form?
If someone wants to explain to me how to do it,
Okay.
look, I would love to. And again, these are things like if I go back to, look, I love amusement parks, right? Like, I love conceptually what Disney did from drawing in a garage to building out his own physical world, right? You can love or hate the dude, but you can't knock his vision. Um, would I love to have a Space Monkey world? Yeah, of course, man. I would love to be able to create a three-dimensional environment where, you know, I can't tell you how many people to this day come to me and go, "Oh, your Space Monkey was a secret unlockable in Tony Hawk Underground too." Right? So to be able to skate the Space Monkey in that video game, that's the closest thing I have, right? Where would I love to have this hysterical Space Monkey land where you can run around and smack shit and knock shit down and play games and do all sorts of silly shit. Um, and create a world and have my wife works for EXP Realty, right? So they own a company called Verbella who creates virtual worlds. So her entire workspace is virtual. They have virtual campus, virtual auditoriums, virtual offices. Um, it's amazing. I would love to have some sort of virtual world where it's just a complete Space Monkey world. Um, People can come in and you know, I'd love to have space money, right? That's my trademarked Space Monkey money when that time comes, right? Where you can come in and share things, buy things, interact with people, get special experiences, have exclusives, this just beyond my capabilities at the moment, right? So um, if there's people out there that know how to do this stuff, I'm open. If the opportunity arises in the future, I'm ready. I'm just very techno basic, right? I don't know anything about programming. I
Well,
don't know.
you're also feeding these people piecemeal, right? They're hungry, so you can't give them too much at once. You
No,
gotta.
but I think it'll happen, right? I think that just like anything, I think that metaverses and virtual worlds and companies that help create those will continue to get more accessible and easier to use. I used the example the other night with my wife of when I first wanted to build a website, man, someone would charge me 10 grand to build a website, right? Now you can get them for free. Now companies build things out so that you just go plug and play. Now, will the same thing happen with metaverses? Probably would be my guess. Um, I have 3D models because we've done the toys. Like I have 3D renderings of space monkeys. They can be animated, they can be colored and changed and modified. So I think all the basics are there. I think it's just a matter of time. So I absolutely think it'll come, and it's absolutely something I want to do. Um, so yeah.
Cool. And someone asked about your experience on Hen. Obviously, you've had good success there, right? You have quite
Mhm.
the portfolio and quite a big following. They want to know if it was an easy decision to use Hen and go with them versus some other platforms, and just if you could highlight your experience a little bit with it.
Yeah, look, hen will be like your first girlfriend, right? Like that you love, not the one you hate. Um, it's look, I love hen. I still love it. Everyone I know through that space, and now as I've gotten an open seat, I'm meeting people in that space as well. But yeah, man, that was the love affair, right? First of all, I do love it. There's no gas. It's easy entry. There's a lot of amazing artists on there, and yes, they're on other platforms too. The limitations with Hen are simply it's its own kind of quarantine platform, right? Like it needs to be able to connect into the other worlds. Um, but that being said, I think the great thing about it right now is the art there is undervalued. The artists there are undervalued. And I think people are figuring out because my secondary has been getting, not just mine, a lot of people on their secondary has been getting bought up at higher and higher prices because I think people still understand that there's a lot of amazing work there. Um, and it hasn't been broached because it's Tezos and because a lot of people don't have Tezos wallets and they haven't, you know, you can't take it and put it on OpenSea. It has to stay contained in the Tezos world for now. But again, integrations will happen. Those things will all disappear in who knows, 6 months, a year, 2 years. Um, but look, amazing platform, amazing community, uh, great energy. Highly recommend you check it out. Not just for my work, but for the tons of artists that are on there. Um, who are again also on OpenSea and Rarible and Super Rare and other places. Um, but yeah, I can't say enough good things about Hen. And no matter how much I do on OpenSea and on Ethereum based platforms, which probably just be OpenSea because I really don't need to be on 500 platforms. Um, I'll still do stuff on Hen. I still want to make sure that when I do stuff on Hen, it lives within the spirit of that space. So, we did a special when I hit 5,000 Twitter followers last week, which unbelievably enough, it's already up over 6,000 in 1 week. So huge thanks to everybody. That shit always blows me away. But we did a 5,000 edition for 5,000 seconds, right? So it's up for like an hour and a half. And, man, I put the piece at one Tez. It's just a way to give back and show appreciation and love to the community that's been there and supported all along. And so as time goes on, we'll continue to do stuff, and I'm sure I'll end up doing stuff like that on OpenSea once I build more of a history there and understand it more and build a community there. Um, but I think it's important, man. I believe in taking care of those that take care of you, and it's why I try to make myself accessible and available on Discord, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, because I truly am appreciative of everybody's support.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think when they have interoperability and people can port it over, I think that'll make a big difference. But
It
there are
will.
there are a ton of artists that kind of use it like a playground to,
Mhm.
they view it as people that are more just appreciative of collecting the art, less trying to flip it for financial purposes. And so you'll get artists like yourselves that are like, hey, I just want to give something to the people that'll appreciate it. And it's a different cost paradigm than it would be anywhere else, just because it's a kind of a different purpose almost at this point.
Yeah, look, exactly. It was a great place to get an education. Um, because again, that's what you got to do. You got to learn the space. You got to learn the people in the space. You got to learn how the space moves, how to respect the space. Even as a seasoned artist in the real world, I'm no different than anybody else in the digital world, right? Especially at first. Um, so I wanted to make sure that I approached it that way, and so Hen was a great place to get feedback, learn the community, learn how things operate, figure out the right way to do drops. And now I'm going through that education process all over again.
Right. So I'm actually looking at a preview piece right now for your drop coming up on OpenSea on Monday. And if I
Hmm.
go to OpenSea now, you have 8 pieces there now. A new drop coming Monday. Can you tell us a little bit about this drop?
Yeah, it's going to be a new collection, and it's tentatively called Arms Race. I think the whole idea behind it was, this idea of a literal arms race, right, where everyone's trying to one up each other, and it's this what's next, right? So not just in the military sense, but in this idea that uh, everybody's always trying to get a leg up, right? So um, there's going to be, I got 9 pieces done. I might have 10. There's going to be everything from editions to 20. Last time we did 4 1-of-1s, 2 editions of 1 edition of 20, 2 of 10, 1 of 5. It'll be similar this time. Last time everything sold out in the first 3 minutes, and secondary sales have been pretty good. Um, and so we'll see. We're gonna have a spaces. So if you follow me on Twitter, then you'll see you can come to the spaces or come to the Discord as well. The Discord, I like see my admins already made me space monkey emojis in Discord. So I will tell you, I love my admin team. They're amazing. So come in the Discord, come to Twitter, find us on Discord, um, and you'll see. But same premise. We'll have editions, 1-of-1s. We're launching at 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday. We'll be in Discord. We'll be in spaces on Twitter talking, and we'll just go through the launch same way we did before, and we'll see what happens this time.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see what you guys come out with. If I can snag some, I got to get my ETH ready.
Okay.
Um, here's a question from the audience. Any advice for a new artist trying to come in and find their home in the NFT space?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's the same as any artist in the real world space. You just, I think everything, nobody gets there overnight, right? Like as someone who knows other artists that are established and way more successful than me, even including Murakami and Cause and Shepard Fairey, man, they struggled for years, same as anybody, right? And it took them forever to fine tune what they did and figure it out. So I think the best thing is never be in a rush. Always trust your own voice, man. Don't ever go, oh, that's what's hot. Here's what's kicking. Just trust what you want to do and what speaks to you as an artist and a person, and just work on evolving it. And it might take you 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Um, but what I think people relate to is like anything, it becomes familiar because there's a history. Um, and they also know it's sustainable because people like what I do because they know I've been doing it for 25 years. It's not flash in the pan. I'm not going anywhere. I'm dedicated to what I do, and I'm dedicated to taking care of the people that collect my work. Um, so I think you just have to be patient. You have to work your ass off. I mean, I drew, I painted, tore shit up, threw stuff away, redid it. Um, don't be afraid of criticism. You got to put stuff out there, and you got to be open to hearing how people perceive it. And someone might go, "Hey, man, it would look better if you tried this," and you go, "You know what? I was thinking about that, but I was unsure." You'll see me even now come on Twitter, go to Instagram, and if I'm unsure about something, I'll ask a question. Hey, do you like it better like this? What about that? Discord now becomes a great immediate. I switched that number 9 piece. I think I switched the headdress like 7, 8 times. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the bandages. So I recolored them a bunch of different times. I changed how they were shaded. And I eventually landed where I felt was right. But man, I get people to this day like, I don't like that. That doesn't work. I don't. But if I can tell it's constructive criticism and it makes sense, I'll break it down and I'll try some shit.
Right.
Um, so you can't be afraid to be criticized. Um, you just have to trust who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and just keep doing it. And take every small victory as it comes. Right? Like I started by giving free stickers out to people. I wasn't making any money. And then I got invited to a couple small group shows. I hung shit in coffee houses, same as fucking tons of other people. Um, I talked to each and every person and slowly just built it up. But it took a lot of years before it started giving returns in a monetary sense, right? So you also have to look beyond that. Don't look to it. I need it to make me X amount of money, or I need this to be able to just do it, let it organically happen, do what you have to in the meantime. Cherish the journey along the way, man, because it's a huge piece of what will get you where you're going.
Love the advice, and you are so grounded and so down to earth. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. I am super excited for this drop on Monday, and looks like a lot of the community is as well. So,
Thank
James, thank you for spending the time today. Really, really appreciate it, and wishing you the best of luck on Monday. I'm sure it'll sell out quickly.
No, I appreciate it. And do you tell people where they need to go to get to the Twitter, the Discord, or want
Yeah,
to make how to
we
find?
we definitely do. We will drop all the links in our socials. It's also on our Twitter. But if you want to call anyone out to a particular one right now, you can. We'll make sure that's on there as well. But if you
Uh,
go to your Twitter right at the top, there's a link to the Discord. So
yeah,
you can go to the Twitter, Dalek Space Monkey, right?
yeah, without the
And
E.
yep. And then right at the top here, there's a link to the Discord where you guys are chopping it up about all kinds of stuff. I think I even saw one of your longtime fans talking about they had a towel with a space
I,
monkey on it or something like that, right?
yeah, I've been converting my IRL collectors and getting them into this space. And look, we talk about the digital and the real life stuff in there, and we've done good. I opened it last week. We're already at 330, 40. It's great. A great team. Everyone's been helpful, but yeah, come on in, chat it up. We'll definitely be in there all weekend and Monday as we count down into the drop. So if you have questions about the drop, you want to know about prices, you want to get an idea, you want to know where to be, the Discord's gonna be a great place to find us. And then yeah, the Twitter is also, but I think Discord's gonna be the quickest way to get responses to any questions you might have.
Yep. So from your Twitter, right at the top, you can get the link to the Discord, also to your OpenSea, your Insta, and your Hen, actually, which is melting my computer, unfortunately, at the moment. So I think I got to upgrade. But man, it's been so cool talking to you. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to do it again sometime when you have another cool project coming up.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your time today, man. Thank you so much.
All right, you have a good one.
All right, you too, man.